Recording in progress.
I know, it's a little different than normal. Everybody ready? Looks like it. All right. Good morning. I'd like to call this special meeting of the NES Board of Directors to order. And I'll say thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. I want to first note that the public comment period of this meeting has been moved to the end of the agenda. Our bylaws provide for 5 speakers at each meeting, but due to the extraordinary nature of the storm and the public interest, we are allowing for 10 people to speak, and that will be at the conclusion of the meeting. But before we get to the agenda, I'd like to thank all of our dedicated NES employees. Over the past 2 weeks, the ice storm defined the dedication of every single one of you. We witnessed your work day and night under the most trying circumstances to bring power back to your Nashville neighbors. We thank you profoundly for your service and for your willingness to help our customers during these extreme conditions. Now that we have concluded the recovery effort for Winter Storm Fern, the board has a number of items to discuss to support our community recovery and begin the process of evaluating our work so that we can improve in the future. We are proud of NES's response in restoring power to 230,000 households in 13 days. That was historic. Yet, in many ways, we did not live up to the standards Nashville has come to expect from NES during our 87 years of service to the community. We plan to conduct an independent review so that we can understand our shortcomings and improve for the future. We will review our work in our team, from the board to the CEO and on down. This work will be independent and it will be shared. Also today, we will be discussing financial support to the Mayor's Ice Storm Relief Fund. The first item on our agenda is a report from our committee reports. And the only committee report we have today is a report that the legal committee met on Friday, February 6, 2026 to discuss litigation and risk. The second item on our agenda, we will now move to a board discussion of the Winter Storm Fern response. And before we have that discussion, I've asked Teresa and Brent to make some brief remarks framing the discussion. So.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Pardon? Sorry, my microphone was off. Thank you, Chair Davis and members of the board for convening this special meeting. We have critical business to cover today regarding the impacts of Winter Storm Fern, how we can best support our customers through recovery, and how we can improve our performance overall. Members of our staff are here to support questions you may have, and our EVP Brent Baker will provide brief remarks that provide a clear technical picture into preparation, mitigation, response, and recovery, both prior to the storm and specific actions between January 19th and February 6th. Before we move forward, I'd like to thank Mayor O'Connell's office and the Metro agencies that really supported and assisted us through this storm process. I also thank Governor Lee and the state for deploying a lot of critical resources to support recovery, as well as our federal delegation for their advocacy in supporting response and recovery efforts. I owe great gratitude to our employees, every single one of them. They gave their all through this storm. They've worked tirelessly since Winter Storm Fern began wreaking havoc on our community. They've put in incredibly long hours to get us to a place where we can finally begin discussing recovery as a community. Winter Storm Fern presented an exceptionally challenging dynamic. At the peak of the storm, more than 230,000 of our customers were without power, and this covered roughly 294 square miles of our total 685 square mile territory. The severity of the ice storm, as well as the sustained cold temperatures, made this storm an anomaly that challenged both our standard storm response procedures and long-held industry standards. Brent will share a technical report that addresses more quantitative aspects of that. While a full restoration occurred on February 6th, the effects will linger within our community. We recognize the hardship that Winter Storm Fern placed on our customers, as well as areas where we failed to help customers make informed decisions about the timeline for restoration. While customers only pay for power they consume, we understand that many are reassessing their finances and the burden this storm has placed upon them. We have regulatory hurdles that will not allow us to discount bills, but we are taking 3 critical steps to offset financial hardships that our customers experience due to being displaced from home. First, we will suspend all disconnects and late fees through June. Second, NES will provide unlimited payment arrangements for all customers through December 2026. NES has generally made payment arrangements on a more limited basis. In this case, we will allow very flexible through the end of the calendar year. However, we appreciate that some customers experience some real financial hardships as a result of this storm, and extending this offering through the remainder of the calendar year is critical to relieve some of that financial pressure. We will also provide additional online and call center service to ensure customers receive swift individual help and assistance with navigating their respective circumstances. And finally, within this board, we are making a recommendation to the board to approve our giving $1 million to the Winter Storm Relief Fund that has been established to support Nashvillians' needs. That will make us the largest donor to that fund to date. We are not allowed to utilize electric revenues for such activities, so those funds will be derived from non-electric revenues. This storm has been costly. We are working through current cost assessments to ensure we receive maximum resources for recovery. Our preliminary estimates show that damage will likely land between $110 million and $140 million, which far exceeds any storm in our history by many multiples. While NES is in a strong fiscal position, this generational storm will require us to consider a range of options like bridge financing or accelerating our planned bond issuance to be able to avoid or minimize any impacts on rates. We will share more information on this and expect to have a more robust cost picture at future meetings. In the meantime, we will be pursuing a standard reimbursement resolution with the Metro Council that will help unlock necessary funds as soon as possible, and look forward to working through that with them. While we're moving towards the recovery process, I'm clear that we did not meet the expectations of our customers, particularly with how we communicated critical information to them. We are an organization made up of more than 900 employees who must show up every day and execute, myself included, to ensure Nashville has the power it needs, rain or shine. We are committed to learning from this storm, and I'm asking the board members to help us execute on an independent after-action review that can be completed quickly. I believe this action completed on an aggressive timeline is important, while the last 2 weeks are fresh on all of our minds and data is readily available. And it also to help prep us for spring and summer inclement weather. In the meantime, I will share with you 4 actions that we intend to take immediately. The following 4 pillars cover areas which we will immediately address to improve performance going forward. First, we will enhance emergency management leadership. NES will evaluate enhancements to its emergency management structure, including better formalizing leadership responsibility for emergency response, assessing additional staffing needs to support more streamlined coordination, clear accountability, and improved decision-making during emergency events, including major storms. Second, we will address communications, outage information, and outage map improvements. We'll conduct a comprehensive review of storm-related communications and outage information tools that have been utilized or can be utilized, internal coordination, external messaging, and outage map performance. This effort will focus on clarity, timing, consistency, system capability, particularly in high demand times, data flow, and customer understanding to ensure reliable information. Third, we will revisit estimated time of restoration practices. We will review and refine our estimated time of restoration practices, including how EDRs are developed, updated, and communicated as field conditions and damage assessments evolve. The goal is to improve transparency, provide consistent information, and help customers understand during extended outage events. Fourth, we will assess resiliency, undergrounding, and vegetation management. We will initiate evaluations focusing on strengthening system resiliency, including grid hardening and increased vegetation management to reduce outage risk and improve system performance during severe weather. We will complete a system-wide undergrounding study to evaluate the feasibility, cost, benefits, and trade-offs of undergrounding the electric system. The study will assess potential approaches across the entire system to inform long-term resiliency planning. I look forward to working with each of you on these 4 pillars and will ensure they support the after-action review process. I appreciate your partnership through this process and invite customers to share feedback with us and their impressions so far. It's important that we understand what our customers have endured through this storm. Chair Davis, that concludes my prepared comments. I believe Brent has some technical information to provide.
Thank you, Teresa. And I want to start by thanking all of our coworkers and the contractors who came to town to help us make restoration through this event. Words don't begin to express the gratitude we have as a team for everyone who helped get Nashville back to normal. I want to get deep into some details, some technical information about the storm, but first I think it's important to highlight some of the areas that have been focused on since May that will help us in this after-action review and help us be prepared in the future. Since May, there have been dedicated teams focused on developing a 10-year comprehensive storm hardening plan, which included LIDAR, which is similar to an X-ray of our system. They have worked on satellite analysis, integrated vegetation management, and drones for damage assessment, and improving estimated restoration times. We know we can do better, and we know that will be part of the solution, and teams have been underway since May developing the beginning stages of what that'll look like. Now, having said that, today I want to focus on the period where we activated our preparation for the storm through the end and full restoration on February 6th. First, our preparation. Beginning on January 20th, on Tuesday, January 20th, we were actively monitoring the weather, and that forecast is monitored by our system control group, and to begin our protocols for moving forward. System control monitors the National Weather Service, as well as other industry tools to look at the weather patterns that are coming in. As they were monitoring that, they began to notify our contract group to let the contractors know to be on ready as early as Tuesday. Our internal teams on Friday in our different departments began rotating 12-hour shifts Friday evening to have increased coverage, knowing that expected weather was coming. Crews from Maryland, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Mississippi, Tennessee, and more were contacted early, giving us the ability to mobilize 400 line workers in 24 hours. To put this into perspective, people probably remember the derecho from 5 years ago, which was the most significant large-scale event that we've had in recent years. In that event, roughly 200,000 customers were out, and we needed 500 line workers to be able to complete that restoration. This storm ultimately resulted in nearly 3 times the pole damage and almost 4 times the workforce of our last benchmark storm. Second, mitigation, where we know we have to do better going forward. Teresa has already mentioned communications. I'll focus on vegetation. Vegetation has been a high public interest throughout this event and is a major driver of outages, especially in ice storms. The numbers that we discuss are fiscal year numbers, and for this fiscal year, July through January, we're on track to complete our target. Our target is to trim 1,200 miles of trees and vegetation annually, maintaining a 4-year cycle across our roughly 4,800 miles of distribution lines that are overhead. Since 2022, we have averaged completing 75% of that target, recognizing real-world constraints such as vendor availability, weather, terrain of certain circuits, and access. Over the last 4 years, our budget has increased to $21 million, and we are conducting a formal after-action review, as you've heard, and we'll share those actionable insights of how to continue to improve. In addition to the work that Teresa has mentioned, we have formed our storm recovery team that is focused on preparedness, mitigation, and execution at scale so that we are not waiting for the after-action review, that we can be prepared for spring weather that we know impacts this area. Third, our response. Once the outages began on Sunday, January 25th, our response scaled rapidly and, most importantly, safely. As witnessed, we have no fatalities and no major injuries through this event. There were slips and falls and some other injuries, but we are thankful that we made it through this storm with no fatalities and no major injuries. We first mobilized 400 line workers from 81 full crews. This is both NES and contractors that are familiar with the recent NES system. And line worker counts grew from approximately 424 hours to 700 by day 3 to 1,900 by day 9. Once we added the additional support, including our vegetation crews, and then we got support from the state and federal organizations, we had 3,300 total personnel in the field, everything from assessment to restoration and line construction. That ramp up reflects regional contractor availability and our commitment to restoring power as quickly as possible without compromising safety. Every day we said safety over speed, making sure that our crews were safe first. Fourth is our recovery. Restoration was impacted by the sheer widespread scale of this event, impacting 294 miles of damage and nearly 800 broken poles, compounded by ice that remained on trees and lines for days. And since Friday, when all of our customers were restored, except for those that have limited damage at their home and individual customer side work remaining, our focus has been getting power to customers. The phase of recovery that we are in right now will continue for weeks as crews continue to go through the system and take care of any vegetation that might be fragile and may cause future damage and future outages. Also, we have things like street lights and other things that were not critical to getting power on that we will be revisiting in the coming weeks. I recognize I've covered a lot, but probably not all the detail everybody wants. I'm open to answering questions and what I can answer today or providing information in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, just like to open it up to board discussion. If any board member would like to ask questions or make any comments.
I'm happy to jump in with the first question. Brent, thank you for sharing that overview. I think I'm curious in diving a little deeper into some of the technical components of the communications process, and particular what you might call like a ghost notification that did occur at times. Can you share a bit more about that and what the initial analysis indicates?
You bet. Yeah, and that was one of those areas of improvement that we'll be working on. The way that what had happened there was our programming logic within our outage management system puts an entire circuit to be communicated when there's an outage to let people know there's an outage. In restoration and events like this, there are what are called nested outage, or customers that are not able to be restored with the whole. We learned through this event that we need to address that and dive even deeper into those nested outages and make sure we improve on that system in the future.
Thank you. I think another question that comes to mind in these moments could just be the sheer scale of the outages and how taxing that is on any system. Is any initial indication that the volume of concurrent outages had any sort of an impact?
Yeah, we will be increasing capacity. As we went through this event, we tested both the texting capacity and the calling capacity, and both of those hit limits until Thursday, where we were able to get back to what was a more normal ability for customers to get through.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. I appreciate the information on the operational response. We've seen a lot of those numbers, and I think it will be judged, but it's impressive and substantive. You know, I go back to this apology to the ratepayers for the inconvenience, the damage, and really the uncertainty, and really our elected official partners that communication is so important, that we own the problem and we're out in front with information. Where exactly does the responsibility for communication with elected officials rest here? Explain that to me.
Well, mic's off again. We have a communications team, and then we have a team that does outreach to public officials. And I think the team that does outreach to public officials did I think they did a really good job. I think there was information, the information was slow to come out. The damage assessment took a long time to get complete, to come up with restoration estimates. So one thing we are looking at currently is how do these utilities that routinely get damage of this scale do their damage assessments to improve how we can do that? Because we had teams of engineers out, and Brent can provide more detail on this, but we had teams of engineers out traveling around our service territory, looking at damage, because we really needed to know how many poles are broken, how many spans of line are down. You can get some of that information by drones with LiDAR, and we had contacted organizations to try to get that initially, and Brent was able to get drones, but not with LiDAR. So for future storms, that may be a process that we can utilize to get information faster. So I think the gap was customers really wanted to know, what do I need to do? Do I stay in this hotel? Do I tough it out in my house? And so I think that's where the real gap, one of the gaps was.
Yeah, I don't know quite what my question is, because I think we did a superb job operationally. The world will judge that, but and getting to the mayor, understanding the order of magnitude of what this could be, an ice storm. The Weather Channel said today that we've had a tornado here, we've had a derecho, we've had a flood, and this was monumentally worse because it affected everybody. And getting out in front of that in terms of the potential devastation early, even though you may not know, forget the assessment. It takes a while to get the assessment. Did we have an opportunity there to get out there and sort of frame the potential order of magnitude of the damage early in concert with the mayor? You with me?
I am. Yeah,
get out.
yeah.
Not the assessment. That takes a while
That's
to
right.
do the assessment. But to own the problem, and to say this could be far worse than anything you have experienced.
Yeah. And to put it into perspective, we were referring to the derecho in our assessment plan, and that restoration was done in 7 days. So our first few days, we were in a mindset that it could be similar to the derecho, but worse. Knowing that we were at 230,000 outages and the derecho was 200, the factoring of what an ice storm was different than a spring storm had not yet got into our perspective from what that would do
That's
to
an
this.
opportunity, because an ice storm,
That's right.
it kept icing.
Yes.
And you have, everybody's yard looked like a logging operation,
Right.
which is totally different. So we have an opportunity there to get out in front a little more in the future. Is that fair
That's
to
right.
say?
And early on, we knew we had to stabilize so that we could begin to know what scale looked like and then what our message would be. In this one, lesson learned is that in an ice storm will take way longer than it will in a storm like
Right.
a tornado. So in the future, we will begin to make more targeted long-range estimates
Right.
that will be able to give that scale. The other thing is we will not make excuses at speeding up. So we are proud of all of our crews that did a great job through this, but we want to find ways, and we worked with some partners in the industry at Detroit Edison that helped us learn from some of their history. We have a better model now of how to predict. We will be enacting that in the future. So, one, to the point of communications, while there are failures in technology and failures in ways we can do that, we owe it to everybody we communicate with to know more about the restoration time quickly. And this storm has pushed us to modernize on all fronts, including getting that information as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I just think, we've got our employees were heroic. Our
Absolutely.
union was heroic. I mean, their families were affected by it.
Absolutely.
But somehow, if we could have gotten up there
That's
and
right.
defined the potential devastation early
Yes.
in concert with the mayor, we might have managed expectations better that would, where people would still be upset, but they'd have more of an appreciation for the recovery period. So that, you would agree that's an opportunity.
Absolutely. And as we went through the week, we were giving the message of we were getting more information and we expect to get information, and it just every day got worse. Right. And we will no longer wait for every day to get worse. We will have a more targeted early message about what that could be and setting some more extreme possibilities without relenting on.
Well, I'll
the
quit
restoration effort.
talking, but I think we did a pretty good job. And University of Mississippi just reopened today. That would tell you something.
Yeah,
They went through the same storm.
and I think you said it well. Teresa and I and all the executives said our employees were heroic. They did a great job. For us, we are committed to continuing to improve. We won't rest on the great work that our employees do. We are committed to making sure we do better in the future and that we learn everything we can from this. This is not something lost in time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead and I'll go.
So, what are the opportunities to enhance and improve our texting system to our customers? Because most of the calls that I receive were calls from customers that said that they got a text that their power was on, but then when they got there, their power was not on. And of course, that caused a lot of problems and all for a lot of people. So, my question is, when we learn this, what opportunities do we have now to enhance that system?
So we are already diving into that right now. The scale of this challenged all of our platforms that we had put in place. This requires us to dig even deeper to make sure all of our sections of line that could possibly be broken, that we have those in place. One of the challenges in the field to get power restored, crews are making decisions of what to leave off and what to turn on to be able to get quick restoration. We need to have visibility to that and not slow down our crews. So we're working quickly to find out just what it will take to be able to let our crew members continue to make progress and make decisions that get restoration quickly, but that we don't have a technology gap in information from the field to what we give to our customers.
Yeah, because I was in awe and all that. A lot of people who called me wanted to know, well, why is my neighbor's lights on and mine is not on? I mean, like, I don't know, but how does that happen?
Yeah, so in the field, our crews are making real-time decisions on how they can get the most customers restored as quickly as possible. If they can get 700 out of 1,000 customers on at that moment, but that last 300 would take a significant amount of time, but they can get another 1,000 on by moving something to something close. That is the decision they're making. So quickly moving to get as many customers restored as possible, which is why early on in the storm, you see the numbers move quickly. Big chunks of customers, 60,000 on over the first night. That happens early on. As we get further down the line, the complication of getting power restored also only impacts smaller and smaller number of customers.
Member Harris, with regard to neighbors having power and you don't, that can also occur because in neighborhoods you'll have a row of houses on one circuit, and across the street from them they'll be on a different circuit. It's just the way the circuits are designed. And on one street in particular, there was a customer that everyone on their street had power except them. They were on the end of the end, and they were actually on a different circuit. They were fed from kind of behind their property. So you have those circumstances a lot.
This will just be a quick follow-up on your question, which is looking at the estimated restoration time component of the existing software. Did that function as expected?
We do not have estimated restoration time in our current software.
Okay.
That is still a manual function. So a lot of credit to our crews in the field who are feeding that information back in a manual way.
Yeah.
Our next investment in technology will be field work and asset management that will have those tools involved.
Thank you.
All right. First of all, I echo the sentiments. Our linemen and our people did amazing work. Many of you are here and watching today. I want to thank you. I've never been so thankful to see yellow lights, yellow flashing lights coming down my street. This was a really difficult situation. In that spirit, these storms will not end. We will have more crises in the future. And we need to do better, and we need to look at all the things that we can do. So, Madam Chairman and members of the board, I move today to review the actions taken and not taken by NES before and throughout the Winter Storm Fern. We need to look at this comprehensively. This would be an independent after-action review, or essentially an assessment by industry experts. People have expertise in this area focused on our response as NES. It would identify what NES must do better to respond in these times, in these types of situations, looking objectively at the steps that we took and the steps that NES did not take. The results should help guide our next steps as we improve how we communicate, how we respond, and how we prepare. Whether that's creating better policies and procedures, being more transparent with Metro regarding needs, or running drills to test response plans. While this was an extraordinary storm, it is not the only service crisis we will face. We must plan and be prepared for what is possible. We need an unbiased report, one that focuses on facts and not politics, one that brings concrete and actionable findings back to us. Throughout this assessment, everything should be on the table, including our preparations, our communications, as you mentioned, our operational response, and our technology, so we can be prepared for the next storm or other emergency, improve our recovery time, and improve service to our customers. Service they expect and deserve. I am grateful the board is committed to full accountability and continuous improvement, and I look forward to further discussion, but I motion that we move forward with this type of an assessment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries, and we will move forward on that. Thank you very much. I just have one question, and could you explain to me a little bit about the complication of our system? Because I heard people say, well, in this rural area, they were able to get power back quicker. And I heard people say, why couldn't linemen come in here quicker? Because our system's complicated. And I know I've seen all the number of wires going between holes, but I don't quite understand why ours is so complicated.
Yeah, so I think in an urban area like we are in, there is the fact that there are a lot of circuits that are intermingled around our system. We also have different voltages on the same circuit. That does prevent a little bit of speed to be able to act, because you have to make sure each one of those circuits are safe, each one of those voltages are safe. No doubt linemen across the region, across the country can come here and work safely. We, through the storm, found ways to get that safe onboarding of some of those crews who were unfamiliar with our system trained more quickly. And what we have learned in this storm is how do we make sure we de-energize circuits in a way that each one of those voltages and any other risk is mitigated. As we go through the after-action report, we'll learn just what else we need to do to make sure we can respond quickly in this storm.
Thank you.
You know, there are going to be a lot of suggestions about underground utilities. We live on a limestone bed. Y'all are going to do a study in that regard, I think. That's an expensive experience, is it not?
It is, and in the last few years, we have been doing some strategic underground exploration, so we have some partnerships with Metro Water already on projects. We've also done some of our own projects looking at areas we are already rebuilding a backyard line that might be better to be undergrounded. So we've already begun experimenting to know some of the exponential cost impacts and where limestone and rock will be a challenge. A full comprehensive study will let us know just the scale and at what timeline that would take to be able to get that improved.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Maybe just one or two more on infrastructure. One is that I find myself looking at comparables because what can you compare a storm of this magnitude to? And I'm curious, I know in the industry that's done as well. You know, looking at Hurricane Milton, I think we had 900 poles here, right? I think Hurricane Milton, which was, I think, a Cat 3 when it came in, 1,000 poles.
Right.
So in the effort to get some context, how is leadership looking at comparables as you benchmark your performance?
So we have begun benchmarking this weekend with a data team that is digging through all of those storms in the recent history. Begun to look at those, looking at the size of those companies, the pre-staging. One of the clear things is in areas where hurricanes are a regular event, a lot of those companies do have pre-staging at high levels, almost 90% of total need. That is something that absolutely is becoming a part of our future state. And so as we do this, our operations has already changed. What we will do the next storm, this has already affected. So that is what we're learning from some of those reviews.
Thank you, and a quick follow-up on that, and thanks for that context. I also know vegetation management is a key piece for all utilities looking forward as you consider extreme weather. And I think when we met as a board in November, we got a helpful update on this. We discussed some of the innovative technology that's being evaluated to improve the efficiency of vegetation management. And we also heard about what we were doing to improve that process. A question for leadership in light of what we've gone through would just be your perspective on that right now.
Right. So I mentioned in my remarks that in May, we put teams together, that cross-functional teams, to put a comprehensive 10-year reliability plan, which included integrated vegetation management. This is our industry term for making sure we take every best effort on every circuit to make sure we do vegetation management in a way that provides the most resiliency. That team has already begun with LiDAR flights, which I mentioned is X-ray of our system, best way to equivalent kind of thought of what a LiDAR flight of our system is. We did our first 500 miles in August to help us understand our trees a bit better and what that is from a proximity to our lines. We will begin evaluating even more what other tools need to be implemented in our system. There are tools that we use, but maybe not at the scale we will in the future. And no technology and no modernization will be left unturned as we do this. And modernization of our technologies is our commitment. And I'm proud of that since May, the teams have already begun this effort, but we definitely are not to the point where we want to be and where we will be.
Thank you.
I just have one more follow-up question on that. So we talk about vegetation management. I think there's also grid hardening.
Right.
And do you plan on reassessing the grid given this particular storm? Because those investments take years
That's right.
to roll out, and capital investment. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that is part of that comprehensive 10-year plan. It includes not just vegetation management, how we design. We are right now in a National Electric Safety Code zone of what level of ice we might have to prepare for. We're going to evaluate, is that the right level that we might want to go to that next level? Is there something about how we construct our lines now, whether overhead or underground, that we make sure we continue to improve the strength of our system? So hardening includes that. We also, in this last year, started down the path of a digital twin. We're building a digital twin of our system, which will help us know where resiliency issues are. We are looking at every technology of modernization from a hardening perspective.
So so just to make sure I just follow up on that. We'll incorporate the inputs from this particular ice storm. While it was the worst we've seen, again, we have to be prepared that it could happen again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and what we have underway now is a starting point. What the after-action review will provide is more information of what everybody else has done, and our teams are ready to hit the ground running and make sure we modernize quickly.
Yes, and I think that's, these after-action reviews that we will be commissioning do look at benchmarking, to your point, Ian, that you were asking about, benchmark across.
Even outside of the after-action review, we are looking at evaluating grid hardening. Are there things we can do that are stronger materials that are designed for ice storms, even breakaway options that keep the poles from knocking each other down when you start to have a pole, shorter spans. There are a variety of things we can do. Isolation equipment that we have some of that on our system already that will help isolate outages to keep a large number of customers from being knocked out if you have a situation at a certain point on the line, but sectionalizing. I think there are a variety of options. We plan to look at those even outside of the after-action review.
I, of course, have just one. This really is my last question, and it's thinking about the diverse constituency that we serve at NES, not only in Davidson County but around the region, and how high customer satisfaction consistently is for public power providers relative to other power providers. Just thinking about getting the context for your service area, for our service area that extends beyond Davidson County, and the services NES provides, the investment you make in those communities as well. Maybe some clarification there too would be helpful. Thank you.
We serve all of our customers across the Davidson County and the surrounding 6 counties. That service is consistent. When we have an outage, we dispatch all the same to those communities as we do within Davidson County because every single customer is important to us. There are varying needs in those communities, so we try to work with the local local officials to ensure that if they have a desire to move forward with a project, we assist with that. So an example of that is the conversion to LED lights. We've done that in several of our communities, not all of them. Right now we have Davidson County, the Davidson County project underway, and I think we're 75% finished with that lighting conversion. But we do partner with the local public officials to ensure that we're meeting the needs of their community.
Thank you. That really is my last question.
Any more? You good?
I got one more question. I know it's probably haven't been totally decided yet, but how are we going to hear from our customers at some point?
We are welcoming customers to come speak at our meetings, but yesterday we discussed putting a tool on the website to allow customers to provide written feedback to us so that we can work through it in a logical fashion.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for the reports, and thank you all for the good questions, which we'll continue to ask. The next item on the agenda is a recommendation to increase the emergency spending authority of the President and CEO and Executive Vice President for operational expenditures related to power restoration as a result of Winter Storm Fern. Laura Smith will be presenting that recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a provision in the bylaws that in the event of an emergency or a natural disaster, the President and Chief Executive Officer, together with the Executive Vice President, are jointly authorized to make emergency expenditures up to $500,000 each. The board can imagine, with the breadth of this storm and the volume of support personnel that we brought in, that in some instances that $500,000 cap is inadequate. And so we seek the board's approval today for a resolution authorizing an increase of those emergency expenditures up to $5 million per transaction. Let me clarify, this is only for pre-existing contracts that have already been authorized and that are necessary to respond and recover from Winter Storm Fern. I think there may be more, but right now I think there would 3 contracts that would fall into that category, and they all are external staffing support that we brought in for storm recovery.
Okay. Do we have a motion on that?
Yes,
Make the motion, we approve this motion.
Okay.
yeah, I was just, can we discuss or just second first?
The second, then
All right,
discuss.
you can second it.
Okay.
I said-
All right, and I'll second the motion.
Okay. So I just
No
wanted to
discussion, yeah.
clarify, and you did clarify, this is for Winter Storm Fern, the things that have already occurred that we've had to pay, and that's where we.
That is correct.
Okay.
And there are, I know, 3 companies that brought in contract line workers at a minimum that will be included in that. They are GMB, Delta, and Upper Cumberland. There may be others, but it really is limited to Winter Storm Fern recovery and for restoration.
And we'll get a report on that, of what you actually paid. I think it'd be helpful.
Yes, by the requirements of the bylaws, there will be follow-up reports to the board until all of those contracts are closed out. And I did fail to mention one important thing that is a part of the resolution. If there are those, and there will be those provisions that would be actionable under this new limit unique to the storm, that the CEO would inform the board chair before making those commitments. So the board is authorizing that increase, and the CEO informs the board chair. And it's reported to the board at the next meeting.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Are we ready for a vote? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a recommendation for approval to donate to the Winter Storm Recovery Fund. Teresa will make that recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This storm's impact extended far beyond just NES infrastructure. Tree failures cause damage to many of our customers' electrical infrastructure on their homes, and they had unexpected out-of-pocket costs to get those repaired, in addition to having hotel costs and other things associated with being out of their homes. So we are recommending to the board that NES support our community's recovery efforts by contributing $1 million of our non-electric revenues to the Winter Storm Recovery Fund.
Any questions?
It's a good idea. But who administers that fund? Who actually determines who gets what?
I believe the United Way is in charge of, it's been established through the United Way.
And the things that they're covering, we have an idea of that, the activities where they're focusing today?
Pardon?
The kinds of things where they're focusing those efforts, do we have?
I believe Laura may have more details on what they cover, but I believe they're reimbursing a variety of needs for customers. So if they've lost food, they've paid for hotel rooms, they've had to unexpectedly hire an electrician to repair things on their homes, we've been told it would cover those things for customers.
And this is if it's being administered properly and as a sort of an order of merit, as you say, this is the way we can help rather than doing it ourselves. I think it's a good idea we go through this fund.
Indeed, we do not want to be making decisions about who receives the benefit of these funds. So we'll leave that to the professionals that do this.
Yes.
And is VOAD helping customers with bulkhead repairs? Did they take up funds for that?
I
Don't.
I'm not
Okay.
aware. Laura, do you know?
Okay.
So there have been some discussions with the VOAD team about weatherhead repair coordination. My understanding is that there will be some assistance through Winter Storm Recovery Fund for some of those expenses. And to some extent, there were some partnerships that Nashville Electric Service engaged in to support that effort in low-income environments.
Who are the other contributors to that fund?
I know the list is growing. I understand that Tractor Supply, Comcast, and some other big players in the community have made donations.
Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Now we will move on to our public comment period. And I'll turn the meeting over to the secretary to the board, David Frankenberg.
Thank you, Chair Davis. The public comment period is an opportunity for NES customers to address the Electric Power Board on matters of interest to the board. While the board's bylaws generally limit the number of speakers at regular meetings of the board to 5, the board chair has directed that we allow up to 10 speakers at today's meeting. The opportunity to speak is permitted on a first-come, first-served basis based on the request forms that have been submitted in advance. We have also permitted attendees today to make a request to utilize available speaker slots. I'll call the name of each speaker and invite you to come to the presentation table to make your remarks. Each speaker will have no more than 3 minutes to comment, and the time remaining will be displayed on a clock up here. Please note that this is a time for public input. The board will generally not engage in dialogue or respond to individual comments. Please be respectful and refrain from disruptive behavior. When your time is up, I will ask you to conclude so that the board can hear from the next speaker. So with that, we'll begin the public comment. First speaker is Emily Benedict.
Good morning, board members. Councilwoman Emily Benedict from District 7. I represent Inglewood and parts of Madison. And I'm here today carrying the experience of thousands of residents who were impacted by this storm. I want to start my comments with a question. I would ask that you rescind the motion that you just made that increases the expenditure authorization by the CEO by 10 times. I think a 2x increase is acceptable, but I would ask that you reduce that 500 to 5 million down to 1 million. Just as somebody who's fiscally responsible for the budget of the city, I think that that's a more appropriate amount. So, of course, up to you respectfully, but that is a request that I have. Relative to my prepared remarks, at one point, nearly 1 in 3 households in my district were without power. Many were out for not just a day or two, they were out for 7, 10, and up to 13 days. That meant families trying to sleep in freezing homes, families, seniors worried about their safety, food and medicine lost, and small businesses struggling to stay afloat. And I want to be clear about something, as you've discussed today, the line workers and crews on the ground showed up and worked incredibly hard under tough conditions. This isn't about their effort, it's about whether the organization has given them the tools and preparation that they need to succeed. I'm glad that there were parts of the response that worked, but when a third of the district, my district, is without power for up to 2 weeks, that's not an outcome residents would describe as a success or a good response. My constituents understand that severe weather happens, and what they want and what they deserve is confidence that we're prepared, that communication is clear, and that restoration is as fast and coordinated as possible. I appreciate that NES is initiating its own independent review. I also want to note that when residents were paying out of pocket for hotel rooms and generators, the system's net position grew by roughly $113 million. I'd like to better understand how those resources are being prioritized and how they're translated into real improvements for the people we serve. One note is that I think that there is a pathway to seek approval or flexibility. I appreciate the $1 million to that fund for helping, but I think that there is a pathway to seek approval or flexibility from the Tennessee Comptroller to get around the regulations that you have. So I would ask that I would encourage you to pursue that. And most importantly, if I may wrap up, most importantly, the next storm isn't a question of if, as the Vice Chair said, it's when. And our residents deserve to know that we will be ready. So I look forward to seeing clear next steps and measurable improvements come out of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, our next speaker is Morley Albert.
Good morning.
Morning.
Marley Albert. I represent all the employees here at NES with our union, SEIU Local 205. The last 2 weeks we know have been brutal. That ice storm was awful. It was cold. Like many parts of the city, my family was without power for over a week. We all suffered. It was devastating to every zip code here. And I absolutely feel the anger and frustration of many of our customers. Just like other natural disasters that have hit the city, lives were lost, and that is truly heartbreaking. NES has nearly 6,000 miles of line and hundreds of thousands of poles. As our area has grown in population, we have filled in our urban core, and all of those folks rely on power. The number of employees at NES has not kept up with the growth of our city. I hope that as part of this after-action review you all are talking about, we can look closely at increased staffing in critical areas. While natural disasters cannot be prevented, we can be better prepared for them as a state, not just one utility or municipality at a time. We have not invested in the infrastructure that we need. Floods, storms, and tornadoes have impacted all of our lives all across the state. And there was no outcry to overhaul the water department in Waverly with their floods or the roads department in Irwin after their storms. However, the corporate communication from NES was not reflective of the incredible work that our men and women were doing out in the field. Everything from managing the phone calls, cutting the trees, rehanging the lines, and restoring powers. The public should have been told that NES was not just restoring power, but that employees were rebuilding the system. That's what it looked like. That's what we saw all across the city. They were rebuilding the entire system within 2 weeks. And people should have been told clearly from the outset that they needed to find alternative housing and to expect to be without power for multiple days. I'm happy to hear that there will be an independent outside crisis response review because we need a specific plan that is integrated with other departments in the city. I'm really proud of all the work that we saw when folks came together, but NES cannot just have an operational plan for blue sky days. We need a stronger plan for these severe weather events. And again, that public conversation about upgrading our infrastructure should be around the state and not just one municipality, not just NES. We cannot perform alone. There is shared responsibility for roads, trees, and essential infrastructure. As has been stated, I also personally want to thank the men and women out in the field and point out how incredible it is that in 12 and 14-hour shifts, there were 0 big injuries. There were a couple slip and falls because of how icy it was. Many of us slipped and fall. But that goes to the training and the professionalism of the employees here. And that goes to the culture of safety that this company really has put forward. And when tested, that system held up. And I'm so incredibly proud of that, and that all of the men and women get to go home safely to their families. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Emma Mae Bradley.
Hello, all. I'm just a customer and a native Nashvilleian. I know you guys are going to hear over the next couple of weeks how horrible what this is, and I'm really not here to do that. What I will say is that I've heard a couple people say that we're back to normal. Nashville's not back to normal. And so while the power may be on, we are not back to normal. On my street in Donaldson Hills, our power lines run behind our homes. We moved in 6 to 8 months ago, and we called NES and said, hey, y'all, this looks bad. There are trees, there's brush. They said, oh, you're fine. We were not fine. Our power went out at 6 a.m. on Sunday and came back on Friday. We considered ourselves lucky. It was my desire to ask some questions, but I understand I'm just allowed to speak, so I'll ask some questions that encourage change. I would say first, I read that NES hired Porter Novelli, a very impressive PR firm from New York, to provide some thinking around your strategic priorities to guide growth over short and long term. Their recommendation was to establish a clear brand that can positively shape how the community perceives NES. It's a smart recommendation, certainly not worth paying Porter Novelli for. If I'm going to be very honest with you, there are multiple Nashville PR firms that could have given you that advice over a cup of coffee. As the philosopher Drake says, we started at the bottom, now we're here. Well, we get to start at the bottom. And there's an immense amount of work to do to build your brand that is trusted. And equally important, build a company that is effective at serving our community. A brand is only worth as much as the product that it represents. Apple doesn't become Apple without an iPhone being a spectacular product. And NES can't become a trusted brand without product innovation, consistent performance, and clear messaging. And so I leave today to ask you, what is the plan for innovation? Climate change is real. We will continue to be impacted by intense cold, strong winds, and unbearable heat. And we need a partner that has the capability to deal with our new reality, both in how we structure our power, but also how we handle destruction when the worst happens. So I ask, what is the plan for innovation and how quickly can it be implemented? I'll leave here today asking what the plan is to deliver product excellence consistently. If my iPhone only worked 5 days a week, and then I decided when it really needed the most, I would change products, right? Well, I don't have that option to change products. And so it is unbelievably important that NES deliver consistent excellency. And so that is my question. How do we do that? My last question is, how do we review and shift your communications approach? It's been talked about, right? But we saw over the past few weeks it wasn't effective. Of note, you were done no favors by your local, state, or federal officials who decided they wanted to point fingers rather than ask how they could help. All of that being said, from your web presence, we know needs a serious impact. The texting situation, of course, I got 3 text messages that my power was back on, it wasn't. And so what is the plan for communications? Here's the thing. We're all here bright folks. Tell us what you need to do to fix this. Tell us what it's going to cost, right? Let us come together and surprise you and say, let's do it. Let's fix this. Okay. And I would like to agree with her on the rescinding.
All right. Our next speaker is Doug Roberts.
Good morning.
How's the board?
Appreciate you being here.
My name's Doug Roberts. I've worked as a lineman for the past 29 years. This is not my only ice storm that I've been a part of. This is about the 4th major ice storm. I'll have to say that we did an outstanding job restoring power to 230,000 of our customers and everyone that lives in the house. So it's 230,000 meters, yet it's 500,000 people. I'd like to make that statement clear. And the brevity of what we did and the devastation of the storm is significant. So I understand everyone's frustration, especially being without power for many days. It is terrible that people were cold and in the dark and trying to figure out how to keep their families safe and struggling through temporary housing and generators. Just like the historic floods in Waverly and in East Tennessee and in Clarksville, this ice storm is nothing like we've seen before. And as people keep the system running, we know that NES needs more full-time linemen and staffing. We do need to cut more trees and more clearances. And I would say that most of our policy is been in coordination with the customer. It's been an understanding that, customers value their trees and they have valuable pieces of property, so we have to manage that as well. I think we all know it's not just one size fits all when it comes to tree trimming. And so I think the company has worked well with the customers through the years, and in some cases it doesn't work well with ice situations with overhang and breaking into the power line. So as our city has grown over the past decades, our city government has made key investments like growing the number of 911 call takers, but there needs to be more done, like more linemen hired at the company. We know not everything went right. That doesn't mean that everything went wrong. Our NES team, along with the contractors and fellow utilities, came to help. We brought back power to 230,000, and our service area is significant. It's bigger than the city of Los Angeles. So to give some scale to how big our service area is. So this isn't just the natural problems. Folks across the entire state are at risk, and these storms are getting more intense. We appreciate all the nice things that people are saying about the employees, and we recognize other city workers that did their job in part to help us recover. What we hope happens now is conversation about how we can improve the system, make needed investments, and better prepare for the next storms we know will come. At NES, we have both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. I am a conservative Republican. None of us want to see any partisan political fight with finger pointing and name calling.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacob Kuhlen.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here and for giving me an opportunity to speak. I know it's been a tough couple of weeks, and first of all, I want to thank the incredible work of these line workers who have been working 12, 14, 16-hour shifts, going home, having a bite to eat, a quick nap, and coming back out into the field. That work is historic and incredible and deeply appreciated. And I appreciate the board and leadership being here to hear our concerns and respond to really a tragic failure, unfortunately, of communication and response. We know and we've heard about tree trimming and line worker preparation and things like that. That could have been done better. I know that will be evaluated in the after action. And then, as I've said to many of you all already, the communication was a complete failure. We had constituents literally and figuratively in the dark. I had constituents in my district, District 19, and throughout the city calling, asking questions, begging for some timeline, some update, something that would let them plan. And we had 5 Nashvillians that lost their lives, many of whom maybe would be with us today if they knew that they shouldn't have a generator running in their home, but perhaps could have gone to a hotel or gone to stay with a loved one. We have people who have lost their homes in house fires because they didn't know what to do when the power came back on and what that surge might be. So I agree with what was said before, that the recovery is just beginning. This is not over by any means. This is just the next step. And I do want to address the board, and I appreciate deeply your work and commitment. I can see in this special call meeting there was realization, but I had a number of folks, myself included, that were disappointed and frustrated that in the midst of this historic storm, there was a board meeting that was held that lasted for 30 or 40 minutes. Nashvillians, I know, were tuning in. Hundreds were online looking for answers, looking for guidance, and were deeply frustrated and disappointed that that didn't happen. So I appreciate this meeting. I appreciate the after action. And I've said this a number of times, but, I hear that this is a historic storm. I could see in the weather forecast that Thursday, Friday, and then especially into Saturday, this is going to be an ice storm. This is going to be really bad. Citywide blackout should not be a historic measure. That should be something that we're ready for, that we're prepared for, that the second that happens, we hit go. And so, we all need to be better for Nashville. We owe it to Nashvillians. We owe it to the surrounding counties that rely on y'all for power. I know you're taking it seriously, but this really was a failure that needs to be addressed, again, in the short term, but also in the long-term recovery for those folks that are still catching back up financially, who've lost homes, who've lost lives. So again, appreciate all the work that y'all are doing, and the conversations are going to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker today is B.J. Keith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I've been a lineman for almost 23 years and been employed by NES a little over 21 years. And I'm also an NES customer. The past 2 weeks have been a cold and challenging for everyone in our city. I worked overnight with my crew for 14-hour shifts, and 3 of those nights in negative-degree weather, working to get power restored. As a customer, I left my own family at home in the cold and dark, and it was hard for my family as well. We worked to get the lights on for everyone in this city. We do this work we do this work because we care about every single customer, not certain customers in certain zip codes, but every customer. To alignment, every customer deserves power no matter where you live. As we work to get the lights on as quickly and safely and as possible as we could, I've heard some people ask, why weren't there more crews out faster? The city was devastated with ice everywhere. Trees had to be removed out of the road in order to get to some of those damaged areas, in order to get equipment there safely. So on the front end, it really didn't matter how many people were here. We were actually just trying to get to the places where we could safely get in and restore as many lights as possible to our customers. And that took time, and it took a lot of manpower. And we appreciate NDOT, TDOT for clearing out those main roads so we could travel to get to some of these problem areas. Appreciate the help that we had from tree trimming crews to clear the roads once the weather started warming up to where you could get to those problem areas. So it was truly a collaborative effort from every entity within the city. Like, we couldn't have done this on our own. And I know people are mad about the communication system and technology failures. Sometimes technology fails. For us, the texting system, when we go out and we energize a circuit, sometimes we have to isolate the problem. So when we isolate that problem, there's no way of that system knowing, our current system, I'm sure we're going to work to do better, but it's no way of that system knowing that we had to isolate 300 customers in order to get on 1,700 customers. So when we make those isolation points and that main system comes back, that's when you get your text saying that your power is on without knowing that other 300 customers is off. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I appreciate the support of the linemen. And on the flip side, you can't appreciate alignment and bash the CEO and the management team. We're all in this together. We couldn't complete the work that we completed without the equipment and tools that are provided by management. So I stand with our management team. I stand with the entire company. We did a great job. We communicated well. We did as much as we could, as fast as we could, as safely as we could, and as quickly as we could to restore power to our customers. And I think we did a pretty good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Davis, those are the only confirmed speakers we have for today.
Okay, so that concludes the public comment period, and that concludes the agenda for the special board meeting. So the meeting is now adjourned.